When the whole family comes together to watch the game, nobody wants to miss a second of the action to run to the grocery store. With Instacart, you can get all your weekly groceries in as fast as an hour. Less time shopping means more game time. Let's go. Visit instacart.com to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. $10 minimum per order. Additional terms apply. If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com and use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
Hello everyone, welcome in here to the Friday walkthrough. I'm Carmody alongside Monte Spiller. Kansas State gets set to travel down to Stillwater, Oklahoma to take on Oklahoma State on a Friday night. We're going to talk about that game, but before we do, we want to let you know we are sponsored by Booth Creek Wagyu. Remember to elevate your tailgate this season with our friends from Booth Creek Wagyu. Their ranch is located just north of Manhattan and proudly raises authentic Wagyu beef from farm to table. Visit their retail locations in Manhattan and Overland Park or online at boothcreekwagyu.com. Well, Monte, K-State, no game this past week. Oklahoma State, no game this past week. Both teams were on a bye week, but both teams now get set for Friday Night Lights, something we have not seen in a long time.
Yeah, when I first saw the schedule come out, I had to double-check my calendar. I'm like, that's a Friday night. You know, it's not uncommon for college football to have Friday night games. Our neighbors to the east, KU, I think their first 2 games were Friday night games. So I guess it's becoming more popular. I don't like it for several reasons. It throws my schedule off because I have my high school games, then my K-State games, then my Sunday games. But and unfortunately, I won't be able to go to the game because I'll be coaching Friday night as well. But I'm looking forward to seeing how the Cats do.
It's interesting because this is the first time we've seen. Last week BYU played Cincinnati on Friday night. This week K-State plays Oklahoma State on Friday night. I'll be interested to see if this continues in the throughout the new versions of the Big 12. I think that college football on Thursday night has some real value.
Yes.
Maybe college football on Friday night does too. We'll see what happens for the league, but I mean this is going to be different for the players.
Yeah, definitely. Thankfully, both teams are coming off a bye. I couldn't imagine if we played the previous Saturday, and they had a short week to prep for a Friday night game. But luckily, we did have a bye for both teams. And travel-wise, everything's thrown off or moved up a day rather than the normal schedule. But it's kind of be interesting to see. I'm kind of curious to see how much of a crowd will be there because Oklahoma has really good high school football as well and a lot of pride in it. So I'm anxious to see how many people in the Stillwater and surrounding area will actually show up for the game being a Friday night or go to the high school game instead.
What's interesting is Stillwater High School did move their game, but that's not necessarily the case with the surrounding schools. So you're right, and not to mention people have to work during the day, so the tailgating festivities might not be as large as they normally are. I'm sure that won't affect the students. But behind the curtain of all of this is Oklahoma State's success or really lack thereof this season. They're 2-2. But those 2 wins have been major struggles. And we'll go through the stats. And I want to talk about when K-State's on offense first versus their defense. But I do think it's worth talking about Oklahoma State as a unit. This team has really struggled, and there are some real concerns with Mike Gundy's group.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some grumblings internally, and obviously some grumblings externally with the community, with the fan base. And they're beat up. They started the year with not a lot of great depth as it is, and then they have had a few injuries that made big differences on offense and defense. And right now, I think they're just kind of stay above water. Like you said, they have 2 wins, and both of those wins were struggles, and their 2 losses were ugly. So I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to bring. The thing that scares me is they did have a bye week, and it gives more time to prep. But we also had a bye week, but you never know what team's going to show up. Friday night is different. So hopefully the Cats come ready to play. But right now, Oklahoma State doesn't look too good.
2 straight losses for the Cowboys. South Alabama at home, just an embarrassing game, really. Shout out Michael Smith, former K-State Wildcat receivers coach.
Hey, my guy.
Receivers coach at South Alabama was able to get that win. And then, obviously, they lost to Iowa State in just a really ugly game. Not 2 very good teams in that one, but Iowa State found a way to win. I want to talk about this K-State offense now. Trayshawn Ward likely back for K-State.
Saw that.
R.J. Garcia had to come out of the game, but he is also likely back for the Wildcats. This is the healthiest this team has been on the offensive side of the ball all year.
As well as we played against Central Florida, especially the running game, I don't think it was a complete offensive show that we are capable of doing. I want to see our receivers do well. I want to see Ward have more touches, obviously, being back and healthy. But I feel like there's so much room for improvement, even though we're playing well, and this is the perfect game for us to improve.
There's no question that the receivers haven't lived up to the expectations of a lot of fans and probably the coaches as well. I think they would tell you that. With DJ Giddens having the breakout game he had and Trayshawn Ward back now, what do you think about some 12 personnel? I feel like getting both of those guys on the field at the same time. Seems like we've been trying to call for this for the past 2 years, but now more than ever with the dominant run game effort that they showed against UCF, that seems like something that could really be in the cards this week.
Oh, it can be, and the key part is, having two backs back there is great, but having a mobile quarterback also as well helps out. We all know that when healthy, Will is just as mobile as any other quarterback in the Big 12. He showed it the last game, even though everybody expected him to be a little gimped up from the previous game, but he showed that he still can run, and he ran hard. So that's a great opportunity to potentially have 12 personnel back there and be really good with it. And you want to have both guys on the field. Rotation is great and fine, but if you have two dynamic players on the field at the same time, that gives you a better advantage of putting up yards and points.
I think the impressive part about DJ and Trayshawn both is their ability to catch the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah.
People were talking to Will Howard today, and he said last year after DJ made a really good catch against TCU on the road, they came back and said, "Hey, DJ, nice catch." And he goes, "Thanks. That was my first one since middle school." This is a guy in DJ Giddens who doesn't talk much, but he definitely has the ability. And so I think if they're able to use DJ and Trayshawn as pass catchers out of the backfield, not only are you making Oklahoma State respect the run, but they have to respect the pass as well. And we always talk about how Ben Sinnott is a matchup nightmare. But when you have two running backs who have the ability of receivers as well, it's going to be really hard for those defensive coordinators to decide how they want to manage those two running backs and the tight end.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is the first game in not a while, but the last couple of games that we have matchups across the board, in my opinion, offensive versus their defense. I feel like our offensive line is better than the defensive line. I feel like our receivers are better than our DBs, and I feel like our running backs are better than their linebackers. So I think we have choices, options. I'm sure Coach Klein will have a great game plan moving forward. The question is, who do we want to make our main priority? How do we want to get our points? What do we want to work on? What do we want to put on film moving forward? That's the question, and a lot of that takes place in the meeting room going forward. So I'm anxious to see what kind of game plan he has. I won't be able to see the game live. I have to watch it recorded, but I'm anxious to see what they do.
And one thing about Oklahoma State, new defensive scheme this year. They are now running the 3-3-5. It seems like every team in the Big 12 has gone to that. I want to get into that here in a second, but they haven't exactly done it very well, Monty. The results have not been good for this defense. Very bad in the red zone. They're 68th in the country in the red zone, and same thing on third down defense. Yeah. That is two areas that K-State has had a lot of success of on offense, is in the red zone and on third downs. That seems like a matchup that if K-State is able to exploit, that could really shift the tide in their favor. It
could, and you talked about the 3-3-5 defense. It's a very popular defense, especially in a pass-heavy conference like the Big 12. Iowa State was one of the first schools in the Big 12, if not the nation, to make it very popular. And the biggest difference is, as well as K-State now, but the biggest difference is when Iowa State had so much success, they had the Jimmies and Joes. They had the guys that could play, personnel that could line up, be athletic enough to be there when you need be. And it's a great scheme if you have the guys to do it. And right now, Oklahoma State didn't have the guys to do it and to do it successfully. And like you said, they struggle. And until you get the right personnel in there, no matter what kind of scheme you give, it's not going to be successful.
And it's hard because you have to recruit a specific type of player to run that defense. That's not to say in 2 years that this Oklahoma State defense won't be really successful in the 3-3-5. But right now, they just really don't have those type of players because there is a difference. You watch UCF's defensive linemen. those guys would not be able to play in K-State's 3-down front because their body types are just built differently. So I do think that is a point worth noting for Oklahoma State. They do have some guys. Kendall Daniels leads the team in tackles at the safety position. Another guy who's been around the block, Colin Klein mentioned him when he talked to the media on Wednesday, was Colin Oliver, the linebacker for Oklahoma State. So there is some players who have had some success on that Cowboy team. But when you have a safety leading the team in tackles, that's not usually a good thing.
Yeah, most people who know football, even people who don't know football, they can kind of figure out if the guy that's the deepest in the backfield is making most of the tackles, what are the guys up front doing? What are the guys in the middle doing? And, and good for the safety, he's making tackles, but that's usually 7 yards, 8 yards down the field, if not more. And that's what a defensive coordinator and a defensive team, you never want that. And like you said, Oklahoma State does have players on defense that are good players, but collectively as a group, they don't gel well right now. There's a lot of mental breakdown and communication, and they're not tackling great in open space, and that usually leads to losses because of that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because Mike Gundy talked about that in his press conference this week. The media, again, with Mike Gundy, it seems like there's some disconnect right now going on in that locker room. And with the head coach, obviously, Mike Gundy's been around a long time. I personally really like Mike Gundy. I hope they can figure it out. Obviously, not this week. But there was some discussion with the media talking about how do you limit big plays, because that has been something that's really plagued this Oklahoma State defense, much like K-State. His biggest thing was we just have to tackle. Yeah. He's like, we had tackles, and then we had breakdowns in the secondary. Yeah. And it's a lot easier said than done to say we have to fix tackling. And so they asked him during the bye week, what'd you work on? He said, we worked on tackling. Yeah. Yeah. I just struggle to believe that can be fixed in a 2-week span.
Yeah, a lot of time it's mental as well. It's not that the kids don't have the ability to be great tacklers, but sometimes young men, even though from the high school to college, even pro level sometimes, but young men, they tend to get in their own heads and they forget fundamentals. And a lot of times coaches take them back to basics and they want to make the big hits. But before you can make the big hit, you got to get in the right position. Same foot, same shoulder. You got to track the inside hip. Don't overrun the play. There's little things you can do as a tackler to get better, but it has to be a lot of repetition. And like you said, it's not going to happen overnight, but if you do it in your mind, if you do it physically, it'll come and it'll become second nature, and you can do it well without thinking. But right now, they're just not fundamentally sound.
Teams have been able to run the ball at will against this Oklahoma State defense. You go back and watch that South Alabama game, and South Alabama just controlled the clock. They got up early in that game, and they decided, you know what? We don't think your offense is good enough to come back and beat us, which we'll talk about major storylines with that Oklahoma State offense in the next segment. But they said, we're going to control the clock because we can run the ball against you. We'll get it to 3rd and 3, and then we'll just do a little read option and get a first down. And that's what they did, and they ended up winning the game convincingly. This seems like a game where if K-State gets off to a good start offensively, this could be another blowout. Maybe not 48-0, but if they break their spirit through the offense, because I think that's where this needs to start for K-State. If they're able to do that, this could be a really long night in Stillwater.
You're right, and I'm with you with that, Cole. And my hope is, and my mindset is, what K-State needs to do, they need to go in there, kind of like South Alabama, impose your will. Basically dictate what's going to happen, be really physical in the run game, pass when needed just to kind of mix it up, but basically say we're a better team than you, we're going to show you what we're going to do, and you can't stop us. Because if you allow Oklahoma State to have any glimmer of hope, especially a night game in Stillwater, and you give those kids hope, they're going to fight back. And their fans are going to believe in them, and we don't want to give them any type of hope. We need to score early and often and let them know we are the better team, we're going to dominate. So this game is going to be over before it gets started, and hopefully K-State can do that.
And it's worth noting that Will Howard is fully healthy now. I mean, there was a question. We thought he probably wouldn't even play, and obviously played the whole game against UCF. He is going to be fully healthy in this game. I think using the quarterback run game along with those running backs, it just seems like a game where you look at your offensive line and you say, go be great. And if they can be great along that offensive line, K-State's going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, we need the O-line to continue to get better. I feel like they answered the bell 2 weeks ago, and because they heard the criticism. They see it, and they understand they're a stronghold of the offense, and they need to continue to get better. We need another dominant game from the offensive line this coming Friday, and I think they will.
It'll be fun to watch, especially on that offensive side. We'll see what Colin Klein draws up as K-State heads down to Stillwater on Friday night. We'll talk about the defensive side of the ball for the Cats, the offensive side of the ball for the Pokes when we come back for this short break.
Getting the crew together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door. Which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
Welcome back in here to the Friday Walkthrough. I'm Cole Carmody alongside Monte Spiller. We are sponsored by Booth Creek Wagyu. Make sure you get in there. Overland Park, Manhattan, online, boothcreekwagyu.com. Get yourself some beef. You will need some beef. Get off of work. Guess what? After you get off work, there's a football game to watch. 6:30, ESPN, Kansas State versus Oklahoma State. Let's talk about this Cowboy offense before we get into the K-State defense. There's really no other way to put this besides Oklahoma State's offense has been really, really bad.
Yeah, they're stagnant. They're not good. They struggle to produce points. The thing that scares me about this game is, like we said before in an earlier segment, they had a week off to prepare, and they put so much on film because they've tried so much because nothing has been really successful. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what to really prepare for. So it could be anything. And Coach Gundy, he understands this is a pressure situation. You're 2-2, and you could potentially lose another game at home. Mm-hmm. And the schedule they have ahead is not getting any easier. So he understands that. So I think they're going to be desperate. They're going to run trick plays. They're going to run different formation. So I'm kind of curious to see what they do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Offensively at quarterback, they announced on Tuesday that they would be starting Alan Bowman. Started his career at Texas Tech, played a lot of football there. Transferred to Michigan, was a backup. Comes to Oklahoma State. He's been in college. This is his 6th year. He's played a lot of football. Seen a lot of different pictures. There's not going to be a lot that's going to fool him. But the stats this year have not been very good for Mr. Bowman. 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. As a group, Oklahoma State has played 3 quarterbacks. And up until the Iowa State game, Monty, they played 3 quarterbacks every single game, those first 3 games. Four drives would go to Alan Bowman, 4 drives would go to Garrett Ringel, and 4 drives would go to Gunnar Gundy. And if there was any drives left in the game, they would figure it out from there. But that's how they did it. They decided on Alan Bowman. Have you ever seen a team be successful and play 3 quarterbacks? I
have not, and I'm hoping they keep that same system come Friday because if that's the case, nobody can get in the rhythm, and K-State hopefully can rattle all 3. So, no, that is odd. But, I'm not an offensive genius by any means, so what do I know?
5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for the quarterback room as a whole. They're just searching for answers right now. It makes sense that they want to go with the veteran and Bowman. He has done some good things, more of a check down guy. The big plays just have not been there for Oklahoma State. And if you're a K-State fan, that's got to make you feel good, or maybe it makes you scared because Oklahoma State traditionally has been a throw the ball down the field kind of team. K-State's obviously given up some big plays on defense. But this year, Oklahoma State has lived in the mid-range, and it's not even so much on the ground. It's just those short intermediate routes. I feel like if that's the game plan against K-State, that's not going to work.
No, and I think Oklahoma State will be forced because, like you said, Oklahoma State has a history of having dynamic quarterbacks, up-tempo. They can speed the game up. They get 10 yards on the line right away, another 10 yards, and then before you know it, they're scoring a touchdown. Not the case this year, you know what I mean? And they can afford to go up-tempo because they understand they want to slow the game down, try to limit as much time to keep K-State's offense off the field because the defense probably not going to hold up, so they have to go different. So I don't know what their plan is going to be. I'm really curious to see what they come out with. Like I said, the bye week, they have an opportunity to do something different, so we'll see.
Yeah, and offensively, 127th in the country in passing efficiency.
Wow.
So, again, the quarterback position is huge in college football, and they just haven't figured that out yet. Oklahoma State has 99th in total offense and 100th in scoring. So the numbers are not pretty for the Cowboys. On the flip side, you look at K-State's defense. The run defense has been outstanding. 6th in the country in run defense. That is something that they can hang their hat on. They have hung their hat on. And if you take out some of those big, long runs against Missouri, Troy, and then UCF, this is a top 3 team, maybe a top 2 run defense in the country. Either way, you've got to be feeling really good if you're a K-State fan.
I am, and one of the things that makes me happy about the fact that we're playing Oklahoma State on a Friday night, a down Oklahoma State team, it allows our young linebacker group to getting thrown back into the fire, a full game against, I'm not going to say a less opponent, but less stressful situation. And they can learn and see how a game tempo will be. And more game time they get, more game experience they get, the better they get. And they'll be ready for the long haul. So I'm really excited about that for our linebackers group.
Glad you mentioned that. Another young guy, Austin Romaine, going to get the start again. Jake Clifton, we did not think he would play against UCF. Apparently, he had a great week of rehab, great few weeks of rehab. He actually played against UCF. That's going to be another guy along with Desmond Purnell. Those three young guys are going to be really the ones that carry the load, along with, obviously, the veteran Austin Moore in there. But they did lose a linebacker, Asa Newsom, most likely out for the year. Chris Kleiman said that he would end up redshirting. He got hurt in practice. So that was a guy who was on the two deep that won't be seen in the field. But other than that, you look at this linebacker room and man, this just feels like a great opportunity for guys like Austin Moore and Desmond Purnell to really make some plays. Mike Gundy talked about K-State's front seven, and when he mentioned it, he said, you know what, they run the same defense they have. They're not as experienced, but they still create those havoc plays. He knew who Daniel Green was. He knew who some of those defensive linemen were. He called Desmond Purnell number 32. Either way, Desmond Purnell is making a name for himself.
He is, and I'm happy to see another local kid. You talked about him in previous shows, and I'm happy to see him make a name for himself, and he's a leader. And it's one of those guys like, it's funny, a lot of the K-State guys, they have really good personalities, but they're really quiet guys. And it's fun to see these guys grow because Desmond came in as a safety, and he's now a linebacker, and that speed translates well to his position. They can blitz him. They can have him drop in coverage. He's a great spy on quarterbacks if need be. So I look to see him continue to improve and become a leader in that linebacker group and on defense as well, because he's only a redshirt sophomore, correct? Even though he's a redshirt sophomore, he's still young. And the other guys that are playing behind him are even younger, either true sophomores or true freshmen as well. So the future looks bright for K-State linebackers.
As it relates to this game on Friday night, I'm very curious to see what Oklahoma State does. Maybe they'll throw those mid-range passes, but when you look at their run offense, their leading rusher is Ollie Gordon. He's a good back. He has 230 yards on the season. Oklahoma State as a unit has 487 total rushing yards. Now, this does take into account sacks, which is a big thing that Oklahoma State has struggled with. The quarterback has been sacked a lot, and Mike Gundy talked about that, saying the offensive line has to play better. He says if the offensive line plays better, then everything works better. And I agree with that, but you still got to have guys who can make plays. With that being said, 487 total yards for Oklahoma State on the ground. Kansas State has rushed for 794 yards.
Yeah, the contrast is very apparent right there. And Mike Gundy, he's a great coach, like you said. This year's a down year, and he's right. The O-line has to be better. And I can see Mike Gundy potentially rolling the pocket, having an H-back back there for extra protection because you have to. But even when they do go spread or even empty or 2x2, your O-line has to hold up. And I can see Khalid Duke having a heyday. I don't think anybody on the line can block him one-on-one. And when he brings pressure, he's gonna make the pocket collapse, and the quarterback has to make a decision: do I step up into those young linebackers, or do I get out and try to make a play? But either way, I think that's gonna be better for us than Oklahoma State.
There's two ways of looking at this for the K-State's defense. Do you want to blitz and try and make Alan Bowman make a split-second decision and maybe make the wrong one? Or do you feel like you can get pressure with your three-down linemen because between Khalid Duke, between Brendan Mott, between Nate Matlack, and you throw Uso Sayamalu in at the nose guard, I feel like they have a really good chance to get pressure on the quarterback with three-down linemen. And if they do that, man, it just opens up Pandora's box defensively.
It will, and I think Coach Klanderman will probably do a mix of both. Based on down and distance and situational football, he'll do both. You can zone blitz, you can just get a rush with a three-man line. You can drop a backer and bring a corner. I seen K-State bring corner blitzes when nobody expected and have success. So I think Coach Klanderman will have his playbook ready to roll and basically use it as needed. But you want to sit back, long distance, just bring a three-man rush and keep everybody else back. But we definitely are the better team, and we have opportunities to basically do what we want to do.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially on this side of the ball. I think if K-State, we talked a little bit last segment about K-State's offense, But Oklahoma State's offense has really struggled. This is a get-right game for this K-State defense. You throw into the fact that the secondary had 2 extra weeks of practice. We talked about it in the last show, but if there's any group of positionally on defense that can get things fixed, you feel comfortable about that secondary because of the recognition that the coaches have throughout the industry. These are 2 coaches in Van Malone and Joe Kleinerman who are usually able to get the job done. And I think it's worth noting that VJ Payne and Kobe Savage, 2 guys that have started started most of last season, the end of the year anyway, and then obviously started the year at safeties, switched spots. So Kobe Savage is now playing the deep safety role. VJ Payne is more coming down in the role of being the tackler. I'm very curious to see how that translates throughout the course of the Big 12.
Yeah, I think that's a great move, actually. And me being a former safety, I understand body types and I understand skill sets. And Kobe being the senior leader, you normally want a guy that's a leader, the deepest safety, the free safety, the high safety. And Payne, he's a great tackler as well. He showed it last year in the Big 12 championship game. He's a long body, and he can do a lot of things. He can come up on a run. He can press on the slot receiver, and he can also fit into the box if need be. So I think that's a great move. And Kobe's a little bit shorter compared to some of the other guys. Not by any of his own doing, but I think him being deep and kind of controlling and getting everybody lined up will work well for us moving forward. So I'm anxious to see how that works.
I look at Kobe Savage in this new position, and he reminds me of Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah.
That's a guy Tyrann Mathieu, who he can play that deep safety position, but he can also come down and play linebacker in the box. Just because those 2 guys switch positions doesn't mean it's always going to be like that.
Right.
It honestly wouldn't shock me to see in specific spots, hey, VJ, you go play the deep safety. We're going to bring Kobe down in the box on this play. I think that would work out really well, and I love how much flexibility this K-State defense has. They are going to flex their muscles against Oklahoma State. Make no bones about it. Oklahoma State might hit some big plays against this K-State defense, but I expect K-State to put Oklahoma State in some uncomfortable positions.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things where we got dudes. Sound familiar? We got dudes, and they have some dudes, but we got more dudes. And our guys can make plays, and we can switch them around and understand. And they're smart enough to make adjustments on the fly, and they're smart enough to be in a new position and not make mistakes. So I'm excited for that. And moving forward, you don't know who to prepare for as an offense, so that gives us an advantage also.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this K-State linebacking core, you look at this K-State secondary, and there isn't a lot of experience. But the more the season goes on, the more experience they get, the better they're going to get. Because you're right, there are some guys that have great talent on this K-State defense. There might be more talent in the linebacking core and in the secondary than there was on last year's team, which is crazy to think about because there's 3 NFL draft picks in that secondary. Well, 2 NFL draft picks, and obviously Eko Boydo being on the Chiefs practice squad. But Will Lee, Jacob Parrish, Kobe Savage, all those guys, if they can play up to their potential, are game changers.
You're right. And talking about linebackers, I'm sitting here laughing, not laughing, but kind of smiling in my head. I was fortunate enough to play with a group of linebackers, and I can name some guys that you would recognize, but they were all studs and all dudes. Travis Oaks, Mark Semino, Jeff Kelly. Who am I forgetting? There was a couple more in there as well that played that were just dominant players. But Mark and Jeff inside were just amazing, and Travis was kind of unsung hero, super quiet, but was consistent. And it's a group of guys that made plays, and they were leaders of that defense. And they went, our defense went, and defense is always top 5 when those guys were there. So just phenomenal players as well.
It's great because you see so many similarities between this K-State defense and some of the great K-State defenses of the past. I think it's going to be time this defense starts to click it in gear. Let's get to our predictions as we wrap up the show here. K-State 11.5-point favorites on the books. I'll let you go first. What is your score, and what's one bold prediction you have?
45-17. Cats, obviously. That's my score, and I'm generous with the 17, but I'm giving Oklahoma State 17 just because it's a night game at home, and Coach Gundy understands they're backed into the corner. And like I said, you back a dog into a corner, they're going to either fight or lay down. I think they're going to fight early, but eventually we will win. But 45-17, and my bold prediction is K-State will have 3 turnovers, at least 2 interceptions and 1 fumble recovery.
We are on the same wave because I was going to pick a score really close to that and go with the turnovers, but since you stole my thunder, I'm going to go with a different score. I'm going to go 42-14. I don't usually pick blowouts on this show because I like to give the other teams some respect, and I think there is some of that with Oklahoma State. The intangibles are there for the Cowboys for them to try and make this a game. I just don't think they have the horses to do it. Right. And there is some stuff going on behind the scenes that might not be the best. So I do think K-State runs away with this game. I see it being a game for maybe a quarter and a half. But there's going to be some big plays that K-State is going to bust off that are really, really going to hurt the Oklahoma State Cowboys. For a bold prediction, I'll say Treshaun Ward gets in the end zone twice.
Okay.
Welcome back to the team, Treshaun Ward. 2 touchdowns. K-State over Oklahoma State. Both of our predictions. Next week, we got another fun game. K-State travels on the road to Lubbock to take on Texas Tech. But they got to take care of business in Stillwater first. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Congratulations on making it to your weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Sunday, the AFC Championship, presented by Intuit TurboTax, is on CBS. The defending champion Kansas City Chiefs go on the road once again to face top seed Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, with a trip to Super Bowl 58 on the line.
That's a touchdown!
We'll get you set for kickoff at 1 Eastern with a special 2-hour edition of the NFL Today, the AFC Championship, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.